All right, guys, thanks for tuning into this channel. Today, we're going to talk about grades. Okay, now this is a two-parter, right? Grades and behavior issues. Sometimes they can go hand in hand depending on the child that you have. And so, as an educator, I hear it from both sides, right? I hear it from the education side of teachers saying that parents are only checking grades at the last minute. And then I hear from the parent side that teachers are waiting to the last minute to dump grades. So let's really dive into that. And if you don't know me here, this is Life with Shay. We talk about all things parenting, the good and the bad. Okay, so let's start from the education side. Now, I have a unique perspective, and not necessarily unique, but I'm open to both sides. I understand what both sides are saying. So, from the teacher's perspective, is we are, by policy, we're supposed to put in grades every week. And sometimes that doesn't always happen. Things come up, especially now with more and more kids in the classroom. There's an increased amount of load on class sizes. So, with one teacher, that could, create some challenges in making sure grades go in, you know, on time. What I would suggest on the parent side is check grades every week, okay? And look at there's usually a due date, right? Inside of that assignment, the name of the assignment and then the due date. Look at the due date on the assignment. A lot of times what a teacher will do is they'll put a due date in and then some time will pass and they'll put the actual grade in. If there's a lot of time between a zero and a due date, it could mean that that teacher was giving that child enough time to bring that grade up or actually turn in the assignment. So, what I would do as the parent, I would inquire about grades that are zeros with the teacher because sometimes kids feel compelled to stretch the truth and embellish a little bit on what's happening with grades. So they'll say stuff like, she hasn't put my grade in yet, or I did turn that in and she gave me a zero, or, a lot from that list. What I would do is contact the teacher first and inquire first, and then inquire with the student, with your child, just to see, what those two stories are. And then try to encourage them, whatever the case may be, whatever story they gave you, to get that turned in. And it's not always about a child being lazy or a child being defiant. Sometimes they just don't understand the assignment. And sometimes the fear of failure keeps them from finishing that assignment. So, really encourage your child to be an advocate for themselves in the classroom by asking questions, going to after school tutoring, and really showing that you're on their side and you want them to do well. So, if you see a zero in the grade book, don't try not to fuss. Sometimes kids become defensive when you fuss, and it doesn't help the situation, right? But just remind them of your expectations, ask them if they need any help, and then if there's a standard at home, just hold them to it. Hold them to the standard. You don't have to make threats; just hold them to that standard. Now, on the teacher side, we try not to dump grades, but sometimes what a lot of students do is they'll wait to the last minute to turn something in so it would appear as if we're grade dumping, right? It would appear as if we're grade dumping, but really we're putting in work, grades from work that have been given to us at that time. So let's say grades are due on a Wednesday and you see a bunch of grades go in on Tuesday. It could be that that's when the child gave us that assignment. And we don't want them to get a zero on it if they finish the assignment. So we go ahead and put that grade in. So acknowledge with your child that, hey, there are due dates for a reason. Try to adhere to due dates as much as you can. But sometimes, a lot of times, really, that grade dumping is an effect of kids turning in work super late. And so it goes in super late, right? Because kids will be kids. To them, if they know they got to the last minute, they'll do it at the last minute. So we want to teach them the value of getting work turned in when it's due, on time. And that's why we try to work with them and be understanding, especially high school students where they're having to manage 8 classes at a time a week, and they have other teachers and they have work for those other teachers, and they're still trying to navigate time management. So we understand that as educators, so we want what's best for them as well. So don't see it as grade dumping, just see it as an opportunity, please, if you can, to acknowledge with your child that, hey, there are due dates, and if there's an issue, try to communicate as well as you can. Now, the other side of it is sometimes behavior is a factor in grades, right? If I'm being distracted and I'm not doing what I need to do, I'm not really getting the lesson. I'm not absorbing what's being fed to me, right? I'm not digesting it. So my grades become an effect of that. So if you have a situation where you have a child that's having some behavior issues and you're looking at the grade portion aspect of it and you're seeing grades fall, what I would do is just try to reinforce the class expectations with the teacher and then come up with a general consequence, right? And it never has to be punitive. It could be, if the teacher says you had a good week, you get to do X, Y, and Z, right? Or if the teacher um, said that, hey, you were struggling, how about we cut down on some screen time to help you focus and adjust, right? We never want to present a consequence as a bad thing that's happening to you. I'm doing this to you because you did this. You want to frame it as a way to help your child, just like adults do. Like, let's say I want to lose 10 pounds, right? I'm not going to say, well, you ate that cookie, so you don't get to da 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 da. No, it's like I evaluate my choices, and then based on my goal, I make adjustments. So, yeah, if I had a cheat day on Monday, of course I need to eat salads the rest of the week. It's not like you have to eat salads the rest of the week. I get to eat salads the rest of the week to refocus, to adjust based on my goal. So let's always put a goal in the forefront of our kids' minds, see grades as goals, and see consequences as ways to adjust and refocus behavior. That's how we could frame it, right? Because just like anything, it's all in how you say it. It's not what you say, it's all in how you say it. Now the result is the same, right? They miss out on something so that they can get something else done. But if you frame it in that way, I think you'll have a better buy-in from your kid. And it's a hard adjustment sometimes when you are trying to consistently and like I want to reiterate, consistently enforcing an expectation, right? There's some headbutting initially, but as time goes on, the more consistent you're with it, it won't be as big of an issue. And what you'll start to notice is that they will self-adjust on your own. And that's also the goal. We want our kids to have built some self-discipline. We want them to build self-discipline as they get older, right? We want them to look at decisions that they're making and say, I need to make some changes based on my goal. So if I'm late to work 2 days out of the week, what can I adjust? What's going on with me that I can adjust to make sure I'm getting to work on time? We want them to have those types of thoughts as they transition into adulthood. So let's use grading, right? The system of grades and the system of grading to influence those habits, those good habits. A lot of times kids don't care about grades because parents don't care about grades, or they try to be apathetic because they're scared of trying hard and failing. So it's easier to make yourself not care, right? Because if you fail and not care, it's not a big deal. But if I cared, really bad and then I failed, it's a really big deal. So we want to use that failure as a learning tool, right? If they get 68, you know, how can we use that failure? Or if 65, how can we use that failure as a learning tool? So we want to establish certain things, pull back on things, not as a spanking type of consequence, like I'm taking this away because you're failing 3 classes. No, I'm letting you refocus on your goal, on your priority that we discussed, which is grades, which is doing well in school, whatever that goal was. Maybe the goal was 80, maybe the goal was a 70, depending on your kids, right? And what their level is. Whatever that goal was, hold them to it. Okay? Set goals in the beginning of the year with grades. What do you want your grades to be this year? And hey, if they say they want straight A's, the first month, hold them to that. Because sometimes kids won't see a reward unless it's right away. So also have some rewards in place for when they are meeting their goal. One thing I didn't like sometimes when people would say, I'm not going to reward you for doing what you're supposed to do, but everyone's different. That what you're supposed to do looks different for everybody, right? Some kids are naturally really good at school, and some kids really struggle with school. So between kid A and kid B, their straight A's look totally different. The amount of work put in, the amount of effort put in, that looks totally different from kid to kid. So if they're making a really sound, hard effort, give them a reward. Okay. And we'll be back with some more videos on this channel on how to help you. But thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe this channel. Thanks.